countries are the very good friend of United States. Why we don't bring democracy in these societies? So these kind of people do not fester in these societies.
And this is your question is for the congressman.
My question to the congressman, why we don't promote the democracy in the Arab world as we promote democracy in Eastern world, Eastern Europe?
Well, there are limits to the power of the United States. I think the United States has tried over the years to promote democracy. Certainly the United States Information Agency, the radio broadcasts and so forth. But especially during the Cold War, which ended only 10 years ago, the United States found itself in alliance with a lot of countries that weren't great democracies because we had to oppose the communist world, or felt we had to. Now, Egypt, for example, is supposedly a friend of the United States, and in some ways it is. On the other hand, the government-controlled press in Egypt foments the most vicious racism and anti-Semitism and even anti-American feelings. I think because that's a way for the government to appease the fundamentalist Islamic movements in that country. They feel that that's something they have to do politically. I'm not sure what the United States, I mean, should we have been? I think we should have been, and I think we should now put more pressure on countries like Egypt and the Palestinian Authority, for example, to stop promoting this kind of anti-Semitic and viciously racist propaganda. That's actually part of the Oslo Agreement the Palestinian Authority signed, which they never agreed to. But the United States is not in a position to impose democracy on other countries. We can put pressure to a degree. Now, certainly, I agree on a different level with what was being said before by Mr. Zogby. We have to make sure that in the United States itself, and where we can really affect things to a much greater degree, that we educate our own people that the evil people who did this are not representative of all Muslims or of all whoever, and certainly not of Arabs or Muslims who live in the United States, a small number of whom may sympathize with these people, but most of whom, the great majority of whom, do not. We do not want to see. We made a terrible mistake in World War II when we interned Americans of Japanese ancestry. We made another terrible mistake when foreign nationals from enemy countries who had fled those countries because they disagreed with the Nazi regime were suspected. So we have to be very careful about protecting civil liberties and civil rights of minority groups in our own country.
Let me do some emails and phone calls here. We're getting an awful lot of emails from Canada. We seem to have a lot of friends in Ontario. Sean says, as a nation of peacekeepers, Canadians stand behind our brothers and sisters in the United States in any action necessary to combat these heinous acts of terror. Colin in Ontario says, as a Canadian, I feel pain for America. As a father and a firefighter, I feel worse for the American people. If asked, I would be there in a heartbeat. Richard Diaz says, Puerto Rico is with you. As American citizens, we fought bravely in your wars. We will fight with you on this one as well. Count on us. God bless America. Let me go to Clinton on the phone in California. Clinton?
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah, I'm 63 years old, and if they called me today and they wanted me to go fight, I would go fight. And I'm thinking that I hear a lot of this talk, and even if they arrested Ben Laden, what good would that do? Because somebody's to take his place. They've got to go out to the nation or nations that did this act on American citizens. That's all I had to say about
All right.
that.
Clinton, thank you very much. This is an interesting email I've gotten from Gavin in Philadelphia, who says, I am friends with Pakistani engineers where I work. They have lived here for years. How can I not worry that they are part of a sleeper network of terrorist supporters? I wish James Zogby was still here, but Congressman...
That is one of the really insidious effects of this type of terrorism. There are sleeper agents, and one of the things that any enemy of the United States will try to do is to have us distrusting each other. You can't look at everybody of a generally Arabic appearance, or everybody who came from Pakistan 20 years ago, or for that matter 20 months ago, and worry that he may be a sleeper. There are sleeper agents, but the odds that your friends or that the people living next door are sleepers are minuscule. There are millions of people in this country with Middle East, not just Middle East, but Southern Asian backgrounds. Maybe there are 20 or 30 sleeper agents, who knows, or 40 or 50. We cannot start looking at everybody else in the United States as an enemy. leave that to the FBI and to our government investigative agencies to figure out who the sleepers are, who the enemy agents are. We don't want to get to a McCarthyite situation. We looked at anybody who was to the left of, who had liberal sympathies and said maybe he's a communist.
That is the downside of it, and it's already happening. Matthew, for example, was telling us earlier that your uncle, correct, in Florida? Oh, that was Mohammed or Magdi. One of you was. Magdi, you were telling me your uncle had been a victim of this already. Matthew, well, go ahead, Magdi. You tell us about it first.
Well, his house was vandalized. Actually, on his garage and on his mailbox, the F word was put, and Muslims was put next to it. And then he got some phone calls telling him to get out of the neighborhood. I'm not sure whether people wanted to protect him or they were just telling him to get out. And there were also people run off the road in certain places. Someone had her hand broken at a university in Florida. I'm not going to say which one, but various acts have been perpetrated.
Heavens.
Let me add here, if I can. The president and Governor Pataki and Mayor Giuliani have been very good in speaking out against this kind of hate crime or a generalization. The essence of prejudice is to generalize and say because one Muslim or 50 Muslims did these terrible things, therefore all Muslims or all Jews or all Irish or all whoever are terrible, dangerous people. That's the essence of discrimination and prejudice. I think it's the duty of all elected officials to speak out and warn people against this kind of conduct, and it's the duty of our law enforcement agencies when they find it, because there will be some people who will do that. In any society, you get people who are going to disobey the law, and these are illegal acts. Hate crimes are illegal, and they should be punished.
I'm sure there may be some fear about reporting them, which there shouldn't be, but that sort of goes along with it. Matthew, you had a story about your friend?
Well, it's not a story about a particular friend at all, but I will bring Jerry into it. But I think this country also needs to realize that the identity or the image that they have of what an American is kind of skewed. I'm an American. And that idea of, like, it's not just a white person or a black person. There's those of us in colors in between. Our names, they can be Saurabh, Jagjit, Omar. You know, our names come from, just like anybody else, our grandfathers, our forefathers before us. But we are Americans, and like I mentioned to you all before, if I was drafted, I would go to war because I am an American man. But like you had this person mention through the email about, you know, I'm afraid of these Pakistani coworkers. That's ridiculous to say such things, because we love our country just as much. I went to preschool here. I grew up, I'm just as American. This is my identity. And I'm proud of the skin color, and I'm proud of where my parents come from as well, and that's also my identity. But it hurts as an American to hear my fellow Americans say that they're afraid of me. I get second looks. You don't know where I'm from. But it's really bothersome, and I think I ask all of America to realize that we are in this together, and don't judge us by the way that we look. And I want to point to my friend Jerry. He's of the Sikh religion. They wear turbans on their head, and a lot of people have confused these folks. You see pictures of the folks from the Taliban. They also wear turbans. That's a regional thing. Jerry he's not Muslim. He's of a completely different religion, but there's been violence committed against people of his faith as well, because people are ignorant and don't understand. And Jerry's just like me. We grew up in America. We went to college together here. And I just think it's ridiculous to attack us because of the way we look. And honestly, this is an issue that African Americans faced in the 60s. We are not anything different. We're equals, and we're Americans.
Had something here.
Jerry, did you want to comment on this quickly?
I'd like to say that I am a Sikh American, and as part of our religious uniform, we're required to wear turbans and keep our head covered. And a lot of people do mistake us for these terrorists because, as you see on the media, when you see the pictures of Osama bin Laden, you see him wearing a turban and keeping his head covered and so forth. I have spoken to many of my friends across this country, and they've told me of stories of people, Sikhs and Arabs and Muslims, being chased, being beaten. And we're not the targets. We're all in this together. We need to find these select few people who are committing these attacks against humanity and go after them.
And one more phone call on this. Sandy in Alabama. Sandy, go ahead.
I am an American citizen. I am also a Muslim woman, and I cannot hide the fact that I am a Muslim. I fear for my life for just stepping out the door. Since this thing happened, I have been in my home. And I was wondering how, and as this escalates, how am I supposed to feel safe? When is it going to be safe for me to go out of my home? And when is it going to be safe for my children to go back to school?
All right, Sandy, thank you. Hezbon, you're from Kenya.
Yeah, I'm from Kenya, and as everybody knows, like 2 years ago, we had just a problem like this. We had a bombing in Nairobi, which the U.S. embassy was bombed, and as Kenya, we lost a lot of people. And I share the feeling with the Americans, and I know the way they feel because it happened to us, 2 years ago. But I'm asking myself, when this thing happened in Kenya and it happened right now here in the United States, and I'm asking myself that why is it happening? I'm asking myself again and again, why? And why do these people really hate? There must be something for it. Why do you really hate, and why are you doing these kind of things? And I'm asking myself again and again, and I can't get any answer at all. So that's only my comment.
Let me comment on that if I could. There doesn't always have to be a rational reason. When you look throughout history at why minority groups were hated, why were the Jews hated in Germany or in other countries, it was not because of anything they did. If they were successful in businesses, that was a cause of discrimination. If they weren't successful, that was a cause of discrimination. It didn't matter. They were called communists and capitalists, both. The fact is that the United States is the dominant country in the world today. It represents freedom, it represents democracy, it represents modernity, and there are groups who feel threatened by all of those, by modern society, by democracy, by freedom, and they hate us for that reason, for who we are and what we are, not because of anything we're doing. As I said earlier in the program, it is striking that these terrorists, Osama, whoever did this, the people who've done other terrorist acts in the past, they didn't ask us, they didn't demand anything of us. They didn't say, change your policy on this, change your policy on that. They just bombed us, because their opposition to us is not based on a specific policy. It's not based because of the Middle East crisis or anything else. It's because of who and what we are, and there's nothing we can do in all likelihood to change that. And we simply have to defeat them and take away their ability to harm us, because they're going to exercise that just because of who and what we are. And if it seems not rational, it isn't.
An email from Lacey at Cannon Air Force Base in New Mexico says, if we don't fight to keep our freedom, we will eventually lose it to those responsible for these attacks on America. My husband is currently in Saudi Arabia, and I fear I will never see him again. But if I don't, I will know that he fought for me, for you, and for America's freedom. Christina.
Yes, I'd like to hear our leaders' thoughts on long-term changes we can make in the U.S. role overseas. I think it's time for us as citizens to educate ourselves about our country's history in developing countries, and for our leaders to really question themselves and ask, is it still necessary for us to have places like the School of the Americas in Fort Benning, Georgia, where we train military leaders that then turn around and abuse and oppress their own citizens? Is it still necessary for us to put dictators in power and support those corrupt governments? And that's what we've done over and over in various countries. I think too often we've been looking at short-term problems, and we're not looking at what's truly right for a democratic country to be supporting, and we're creating resentment overseas. I'd like to hear our leaders' thoughts on how we can change that.
Well, I don't know who. I'm one of the leaders, I suppose, and I can only give you my own views, which are my own. I agree with you on the School of the Americas. I have voted repeatedly to eliminate the School of the Americas because of the abuses of what it has done. I think that most of the abuses of putting dictators into power are historical at this point. They were done in the context of the Cold War, in the perceived necessity of defeating the communist enemy. I don't think we're doing that right now. I think that the war on drugs, however, is leading us into some of the same mistakes in places in Latin America that the war on communism led us into in Europe and Asia and Latin America, and that's a whole different subject. We ought to promote, to the extent we can, democracy abroad, but we shouldn't attempt to impose it on people. There are people in this world, there are countries with vastly different cultural traditions of the United States, and you can't impose different traditions, different ways of life on them. It's not our business to do so. We should promote democracy to the extent we can, but that's it. Let people live the way they want to. We should certainly not be promoting or supporting dictatorships, and I think that that's much less of a problem now than it was, say, 10 years ago. And that is our promoting such things.
Annette's on the phone. Go ahead, Annette.
Hi. Well, I basically want to be very brief in saying that I think we're suffering from political correctness. I think that I would be glad to give up some of my civil liberties at this point to be taken off a plane, make sure the plane is safe. I don't condone anything that's been done as far as terrorizing people that live here. But, you know, if you were to ask the people that died, would they have given up a little bit of their civil liberties so that wouldn't happen? I'm sure every one of them would have said they would. I don't think it's out of anybody's way, whether you are Arabic or Hispanic, to be taken off a plane. I would do it gladly, and people should stop whining, is basically what they're doing. And stop being an individual, because right now you're not. You're just one United States.
Congressman, are you anticipating a fight over that necessarily, or do you feel like most Americans do feel that way?
Well, I think that the caller is mixing up two things. Safety on airplanes is not a civil liberties issue. We have to be very careful not to sacrifice our civil liberties. There will be calls, I'm sure, to sacrifice our civil liberties, to sacrifice due process of law, as there were during the fight against communism, and that we have to be very careful about and not surrender to. Safety on airplanes, going through more rigorous screening to get on an airplane and so forth, by all means, that's not a civil liberties question. But we should not, if we allow our society in the name of fighting terrorism or in the name 10 years ago of fighting communism to surrender our civil liberties, we are giving a great victory to the enemies of liberty. And after all, why this country is founded on liberty, it's to promote liberty, and that's one of our great aspirations and reasons for being. And we should not permit those unspeakable people who don't believe in liberty to cause us to give up some of it.
Teal in the audience.
I'd just like to make a point to all the Americans that feel they need to discriminate against, like, my fellow Americans over here and all the people of different ethnicities in our country that are Americans. I want to say that the people that have been lost in those two towers were not just white people with blonde hair and blue eyes. They were of all different nations. They were people just like you and me with different colored skin. And they were lost too. They feel the pain. And I just want to say that those people that feel they need to discriminate them need to stop, because they're hurt just as much as we are, and that's not the solution.
A couple of more emails here. Milton in Los Angeles says we need a meaningful dialogue to try to understand why people would resort to such terrible actions. Retaliation does not feel like the proper answer. Christine in Illinois, my husband is in the Army Reserves and I support him in our country. The people that did this crime must pay. United we stand. God bless the USA. Let me go up to the audience here quickly.
Zarika, go ahead.
Okay. I would like to question my concern basically to the general. Is it fair for them to point their finger to Bin Laden not really knowing if he did it, because it's causing all these emotions? And people like my sister, she lives in Baltimore. She's in a Muslim Arab school. And they have been, like, people have been harassing them, media has put a lot of attention on them, and no one really knows. They don't have any hard evidence on to who has done it. So now
Well, let's clarify that, because I think that we must, Congressman, since the president came out and named Osama bin Laden as the prime suspect today.
Well, I'm not in law enforcement, but I am told they have very hard evidence as to who did it, and I think we have to face reality. And the reality is there are a group of related terrorist groups out there, most of whom espouse a certain extremist brand of Muslim fundamentalism. They are not representative of 98% or 99% of Muslims in the world. And we have to fight the people who have declared war on us, but we also have to make clear that the people who are Muslims or Arabs, but who are not part of these terrorist groups, are our friends. They are our fellow citizens, and they're not to be equated just because they share the same skin color or the same cultural background or not even the same religion, because this fundamentalist brand of Islam is not the same as most Muslims who believe in peace. So you have to educate people that they're not the same, but at the same time, you can't turn you can't ignore the facts of who the enemy is. A small group of people, but we have a pretty good idea who they are, and we have to make sure that we concentrate on them and differentiate them from all the Muslims and the Arabs and other people who are not them. And that's what we have to educate our people on.
Magdi and Mohammed want to respond?
I just have a quick question for the congressman. You said that the terrorists made no specific demands, yet if I recall correctly from my Gulf War history, Osama bin Laden, assuming he is the perpetrator, said that the reason he's mad at us is because we have American troops in Saudi Arabia, which he considers Islamic Holy Land. Could you just comment on that briefly?
Well, he can say what he wants, and I don't... but the fact... Well, first of all, it's 10 years ago if he said that. But they made no demands on us in the last 10 years that I know of, or recently. I'm sure they have grievances. But the point is, they didn't say, remove your troops from Saudi Arabia, or do this, or do that, or else we will. They simply attacked us and over a period of time. Now, the United States has interests in various places in the world. We have interests in helping out friends. Yeah, if the United States were totally isolationist and did nothing abroad, maybe they wouldn't oppose us. Maybe. But on the other hand, we have the right to do what we democratically decide to do, as long as it doesn't infringe on others. Now, we don't have a lot of troops in Saudi Arabia. I don't know how many we have there now, but they're there. If we have, I'm not even sure we have any troops in Saudi Arabia, but if we do, they're there at the invitation of the Saudi government for whatever purpose. And for some terrorist to come along and say he has decided that he's going to attack the United States because he doesn't like what we're doing in connection with Saudi Arabia, well, if he decides to attack us, that makes him our enemy.
Mohammed?
Previously, Congressman, you brought up the issue of the billions of dollars spent on intelligence and spy satellites. But if spy satellites can pinpoint any license plate number of car from anywhere around the world, why can't those spy satellites locate the whereabouts of Osama bin Laden?
Well, I'm not a technical military expert, but the fact is, our satellites can photograph things on the ground. As you say, they can spy the license plate number. They can intercept electronic communications. But if you don't travel with license plates, if you travel with a hood over your head and don't, period, if you don't use electronic communications, you communicate in writing, very difficult. We clearly need more human intelligence.
Let me go up to the newsroom here quickly to Miles O'Brien. I think Miles is standing by there, and he's been keeping track of aviation around the country and, of course, the changes that have been made in aviation security. We have a number of people in the audience, by the way, who are afraid to fly right now and who have changed their plans. And we'll talk to them in a few moments. But give us an overview, if you will, Miles, of what's going on in the country right now.
Well, Bobby, I don't know if you can see this very well with the glare. Maybe we can get a close-up. But this is basically a nearly real-time image of what the aviation picture in the country looks like right about now. And what it is showing you is a very, very crowded sky. Look at all these aircraft. There are more than 4,000 aircraft over the United States already. The system is pretty much back to where it would be on a normal day. And I guess what that tells you is things can get back to normal kind of quickly. Of course, normalcy is a relative thing. We also don't know how many people are on board all these planes. Take a look at just the Northeast, if you will. You get a sense. Every one of those blue dots indicates one plane that is in flight. Not all commercial aircraft, but many of them commercial, some of them chartered, some of them general aviation with instrument ratings. I think that the concerns are real. I think some of the security issues have to be addressed, and I'm not sure that the FAA has addressed them all with these emergency restrictions.
A couple of folks in the audience with concerns or questions. Go ahead, Christy.
I mean, I live in Germany and I have to go back tomorrow. But I really think, I mean, there's no other way, but I have to fly. So, but I don't think that I'm going to come back for a while because of that reason. And I'm going to wait till the security standard in America is the same as in Europe, so that I feel comfortable flying again.
You also had a question for the General, and as I understand it, he has joined Miles now. General Wesley Clark is up there, former NATO commander. I'll take your question in just a second for the General on that, but let me have you put some strategic perspective, General, if you will, on the news that we got in the past hour or two that Iran has now closed its border with Afghanistan.
Well, I think it's a domestic issue for Iran, really. They don't want any more refugees in there. I wouldn't view it as either support or rejection of the United States, particularly. I think it's just something they're trying to do to protect themselves.
I know you're standing in front of the map there. If you could give us a little bit of an overview of that area and talk about it in terms of military strategy, if and when it comes to that.
Well, if it comes to military operations in this area, of course, what you have is the country of Afghanistan, which is landlocked. And this is ruled by the Taliban movement, except for a small portion of it, which is still where they're still fighting. And the thinking is that the Taliban may be supporting Osama bin Laden. And we don't know precisely where he might be in this area. But it is a landlocked area. It's several hundred miles from access from the sea. It's difficult terrain. There's 26 million people there. They've been through 22 years of civil war. They're impoverished. They've always been fractious, split into tribal groups, resistant to outside presence, and that's even more the case today. So it's a very tough part of the world.
Question from Christian in the audience.
General, do you think that there are going to be any European countries be involved in any military strikes or operations?
Well, I don't know about the military strikes because, you know, obviously that would be done if and when it makes sense, if there's a target, if it's best done. But, you know, this is an operation that's directed against a terrorist network. We're talking not about airfields and bunkers and factories. We're talking about groups of individuals who have perpetrated a terrible act on the United States, several acts on the United States, and are a threat to the rest of the world. So we're talking about something that's best dealt with on a face-to-face basis. We'd like European nations and Arab nations and Asian nations and everywhere around the world the cooperation from the local police, the national police, the information agencies. We need to really run these cells out of business wherever they are, in South America, in Europe, in Asia, person by person, detain the people, interrogate them, investigate them, backtrack the information, find out who else is out there, and take this network apart and run it back to its source. And ideally, we'd like to bring these people into justice, put them on trial for this terrible act of murder, and let justice take its course.
Question from Cameron here, and this may be your last one, but we'll see. Go ahead, Cameron.
I have two things to say. The first one is a comment towards a congressman. My sister is one of the people who is not able to get back into her apartment. She lives 2 buildings away from the Trade Center. She watched the entire thing happen from her bedroom window. And you said earlier that you were going to try and set up housing for those people, and I beg you to please do that because she is homeless. She is a refugee right now. She has nowhere to go. She only has the clothes on her back. So,
well, as I said, I put in a call to the White House this morning, and we're going to be talking to the governor and the mayor in the next day about trying to see if it makes sense to open up Governor's Island and to see how long it'll take to get that available. They have to, you know, the facilities there are mothballed, to see how long it'll take to unmothball them to get the ferry service running there. And if that's a matter of a couple of days or a couple of weeks, if it's a couple of days, maybe we can do that. If it's a few weeks, we need something else, obviously.
All right.
But we're working on this now.
All right, thank you. And the second thing I have to say is for the general. It's a question. What way do you think it would be most effective to go into Afghanistan, considering they're not a pushover country, as was illustrated when the Soviet Union invaded them and lost over 100,000 men? Ground war won't work, of course, and I mean, I think we're technologically advanced to really keep the body count low. I mean, I'm just asking, how are we going to do this? What's the best way?
We got about 15 seconds for that, General.
There are many different ways. The best way is for the Taliban to arrest Osama bin Laden and turn him over to the world community for justice.
General Clark, thank you very much. Miles, thank you. And Congressman Adler, we appreciate you being with us for the last couple of hours. Our audience, I thank you all very much for being here today. Wonderful comments, insightful questions. And we will be here again tomorrow at a slightly different time from 3 to 5. p.m. tomorrow afternoon, another special edition of Talkback Live. And we hope that you will join us then as America speaks out. We will be going to Aaron Brown now in New York for the latest on what's going on. Thank you for joining us.